Oh, hi everyone, Shaun Humphries here with Assante Capital Management. Welcome to All Things Retirement video series. In this particular video, we're going to talk about the perils of being a power of attorney. So when we talk about retirement income planning, I often make the point that it's an all-encompassing exercise. It's not just about retirement cash flows, but looking at your investments, your tax planning, your estate planning, and looking at issues at a very practical level if you're incapacitated. So a power of attorney, I will talk about, basic outline about who should be a power of attorney, how do you make that decision, what the responsibilities are for powers of attorney, and then some pitfalls or perils of being a power of attorney. When you think about power of attorney agreements as a legal agreement, it's not part of your will. Often people think that it's somehow attached to the will. It's not. A power of attorney document is a document that empowers someone to act on your behalf around financial matters, typically investments and bank accounts and financial dealings. Often you'll have a separate agreement called a living will or a healthcare directive that will give somebody the power, the responsibility to make health decisions on your behalf. So power of attorney agreements can be very, very practical. So it could be in situations where you've lost cognitive capacity and you can't make decisions, physical issues potentially, maybe being stuck out of the country and there's a financial transaction that needs to be taken care of and you've empowered somebody to act on your behalf. The power of attorney agreements, there's different kinds. There's a standard power of attorney that might be an agreement that is in place that can be utilized, but as soon as you lose capacity, the agreement ceases. You have other power of attorney agreements that have built into the agreement an enduring clause. So when someone loses capacity, the agreement will continue on and that whoever's been appointed power of attorney can advocate for and make decisions for the person that has lost capacity or the ability to make decisions on their own behalf. You have springing powers of attorney. Those are power of attorney agreements that will take place under certain circumstances. And so the bottom line is this is an important document to look after your particular situation of financial affairs should you lose capacity. At younger ages, it's obviously less common, but as you get older, things happen, whether it's strokes, health issues, dementia, Alzheimer's, and so you want to make sure you have this document in place as part of your overall financial planning or wealth planning. If you don't have one of these agreements and you lose capacity, it ends up being a very expensive and time-consuming process for your family to apply for committeeship, for the courts to authorize someone to act as your power of attorney. There has to be medical checks. I know in our province, it's sometimes hard to get the necessary expertise. It ends up being flown into our province. Assessments are being done. There's long waiting lists for those assessments. And the approval process through the courts can be very expensive. So don't go down that path. The path you want to go down is sit down with your lawyer, get the power of attorney agreement put in place. It's not a very costly agreement. Typically you're looking at probably $200 to $300. So let's go on to the next part of the discussion. You should have one as part of your overall financial planning. And so who do you pick or choose as your power of attorney? Again, just like with choosing your executor, you want someone who has loads of common sense, who has some financial acumen. Again, they don't have to be experts, but at the end of the day, they need to be the kind of people that will seek out advice, that will seek out expertise. They have good follow-through. They're good at documenting, because with the responsibilities of being a power of attorney, you also have the responsibility to keep family informed, let them know what's going on, make them part of that care process, and you have to do financial accounting of financial accounts in terms of how you've used the money on behalf of the person you're advocating for as the power of attorney. And so the other thing is that it needs to be somebody who is domiciled, who lives in your jurisdiction. Obviously, you can be, you can appoint someone who's power of attorney, and if you lose capacity, you could be in need of that power of attorney for literally years, maybe decades. And so it's a very, very significant responsibility. You want to make sure that whoever you appoint ideally lives in your community, and so that's an important consideration. When it comes to choosing power of attorney, I also think they have to be thick-skinned and they need to have a strong spine to make sure that they are not intimidated or influenced by family members or other people. because if somebody is acting as your power of attorney, obviously you've lost capacity. You can no longer advocate for yourself. So you need someone who's prepared to advocate in a strong way for your financial interests and your overall interests. Now, when it comes to the responsibilities and the duties of a power of attorney, let's unpack that in a little bit of detail. And I'll start off by, first of all, saying if you are a power of attorney, or if you've appointed someone as power of attorney, make sure that you let them know what the responsibilities are. Your lawyer who's drafted the power of attorney document can play a role in informing you or your power of attorney what those responsibilities are, and to coach them to make sure that they don't get into trouble from a litigation standpoint. I mentioned in the executorship videos in the past that the fastest growing area of litigation in our country, one of the fastest areas, is litigation against powers of attorney and executors, because often they've never done it before. They're now given this responsibility. Mistakes happen, and you're seeing family members litigating against executors and powers of attorney. So it's very important you understand what the responsibilities are. You document, you complete, have good records, and that you have good follow-through in terms of the responsibilities. So let's take a look at some of the main duties and responsibilities of a power of attorney. So let me just talk about some of the power of attorney responsibilities, and I'll really kind of do it in a checklist form. I'll just highlight some of the responsibilities, some of which may not apply in your situation if you're acting as a power of attorney, but let me just kind of review some of the main ones. So first of all, if you're a power of attorney, you should have a copy of the document. Verify, if you had to act, that the power of attorney in question is the most recent one signed by the donor or the person that you're acting for. Ensure that any or all preconditions for acting as a power of attorney have been met, as an example. And ensure that if you're named as the attorney, confirming if there's anyone else named to act and what is their capacity, the specific direction, what is their role. Obtain copies of any management plans or court orders related to the power of attorney. Discuss the agreement ideally and the duties with the donor if possible. So ideally what you want to do is be involved in those discussions. Once the individual involved drafted the power of attorney, met with their lawyer, you should be part of those discussions at some level to understand what the intentions are. Establish relationships with close family, friends, and other caregivers of the donor. Now again, for many families it's a crisscross. I mean, the husband and wife or partner will be the power of attorney typically, but often kids will be, sometimes family friends, sometimes even neighbors. You see that. So it's one of those things that can be very fluid depending on who's around. Review the donor's personal records, contacts, and establish a system for ensuring organization and protection of the information around your actions. It's really, really, really important to document everything that you're doing, because if you cannot justify and substantiate your decisions, you can be held liable, or there could be litigation. In other words, it's not good enough to say, Mary Jane started with, $700,000 in liquid financial assets. The family had some idea that that was where the starting point was, and then 7 years later, that portfolio is now worth $200,000. And you say to the family, I use that money for the care of your loved one, and they say to you, well, can you give us documentation to confirm how you allocated expenses? How did you use the money? And if you cannot give that documentation, if you can't satisfy through documentation and note-taking what you did with those assets for the care of that individual, you could be in a lot of legal jeopardy. You could be facing litigation. So it's very important that you document. In terms of power of attorney for property, which is really what we're talking about here, create a complete list of the assets and liabilities at the date of your first action as a power of attorney. Establish an ongoing list of acquisitions and dispositions made on behalf of the person. Make sure you locate and review the individual's will and documents any specific instructions concerning property and bequests. So again, you are advocating financially for this person, and particularly if now they're in a situation where they need to have someone representing them through the power of attorney, then it's just prudent to make sure the estate plan is updated. You know where the will is, because that may be something that might be an issue in the short term. Notify all banks, brokers, financial institutions where the donor, the person that you are acting for, has business with, and that you're now acting as the donor's attorney. Confirm whether the donor created any other power of attorney documents with them, and redirect statements if necessary. So it's not uncommon sometimes to see these specific power of attorney agreements directly for specific institutions to deal with accounts. Cancel debit cards, check Bank of Canada website for unclaimed balances in the donor's name, locate all original investment certificates, stocks, bonds, property deeds, and document them, and notify appropriate institutions, and redirect annuities, pensions, registered income payments where appropriate. Review the suitability, obviously, of investments in the portfolio and any cash balances, and making any necessary and allowable adjustments to meet cash requirements, filing tax returns, identifying personal assets, making sure those assets are safely looked after and cared for. File any outstanding ongoing tax returns, pay all income taxes that are owing, notify appropriate authorities, CPP, OAS, CP, that you're acting where appropriate, notify insurance companies, ensure adequate insurance of assets, real estate, set up any pensions and other payments which need to be sort of redirected to bank accounts. Just all the financial stuff that you typically think about. So when you go to our website, there's resources around these duties and responsibilities, and if you want to get a checklist, don't hesitate to reach out to our office, and we'd be happy to furnish a checklist for you. Okay, let's continue on with this discussion. Just a few general comments about powers of attorney. So who can give power of attorney? Anyone who's 18 and over and can appreciate the nature and the extent of their property and affairs, can understand to whom they are giving the authority set out in the power of attorney, and can also appreciate the extent of that authority, can give power of attorney. The person giving power of attorney has to be awake and not unconscious, of course. Who can appoint as a power of attorney? Well, essentially anyone who is of sound mind and can act as a power of attorney. You should, of course, only choose someone who will act in your best interests for your property and affairs, and you can also choose to have more than one person for your power of attorney. I think, generally speaking, you don't want to have, more than one. I think you want to have maybe a contingent. So when you have more than one power of attorney, it just can sometimes make things more complicated, more difficult. So if you can find one person with a contingent, if that person can't act, then that's probably a better option to go. Why should I have a power of attorney? We already talked about that. It really is in the event that you lose mobility or mental capacity. What if you change your mind about who you wish to appoint as power of attorney? That's a great question. In the case of specific power of attorney, the completion of a specific task or the passing of the date specified in the power of attorney results in a cancellation of the power of attorney. Can a general or specific power of attorney be revoked? A specific or general power of attorney can be terminated by any one of the following. Mental capacity of the person granting the power of attorney, unless the document specifically states otherwise. Incapacity of the person acting as a power of attorney. Death or bankruptcy of either parties. Revoking the power of attorney by giving notice to the person named as power of attorney of the revocation. And so there's a lot of pieces you need to be aware of. I think one of the most important things when it comes to power of attorney agreements as well is they should be customized. I don't think it's good enough to go into your lawyer's office and just get an off-the-shelf power of attorney. I know in our province, for instance, executors built right into the Act can charge for the services they're providing, which I think is fair. But the Act does not contemplate contemplation automatically for powers of attorney in our province, and so I think that's something that you should contemplate when drafting the power of attorney. They could be spending large amounts of time away from work. They could be having travel costs. They may be doing lots of time, going to doctor's appointments, that kind of thing. So you should talk to your lawyer about how you can craft some specific wording that allow compensation to be delivered to your power of attorney for certain kinds of tasks, time away from work, that kind of thing. Well, it's my hope that you found this short video on powers of attorney helpful. A lot of the work that I do, more than anything else, is coaching. Yes, a lot of the discussions we have with our clients are around financial issues, whether it be retirement income planning, investment planning, tax planning, estate planning, dealing with powers of attorney. But it all starts with these coaching conversations, and having a coach in your corner, particularly in the financial area, can be very, very powerful as a relationship to help you increase the probability of achieving your financial goals and objectives. So what does a coach do? Well, they spend some time getting to know your dreams, your goals, even your pain points, your concerns. They take a look at your current financial situation and family situation, and by having that information, they can begin to identify gaps or opportunities that might be available to you to either enhance your current financial planning or to deal with potential risks more effectively, to allow you to have a higher chance, a higher probability of achieving your goals financially and personally. In a coaching relationship, what we do is we develop action plans once we've identified gaps and opportunities, and most importantly, we provide accountability and encouragement. So nothing beats having somebody in your corner that's every once in a while asking you, have you acted on this? Do you have any questions on this? Revisiting those things. Accountability is a very powerful way of accomplishing goals. And then also offering encouragement to help clients continue on that path towards those goals and objectives, and sometimes facing some very difficult decisions. I think the area of powers of attorney and estate planning are not super fun topics, but they're important ones. Maybe not so much for you directly, but certainly for your family and loved ones. You really make those transitions much, much easier for family if you take this area seriously and have a coach. And of course, a coach will help to review and fine-tune strategies over time to keep them current, to make sure you're tracking in the direction you want to be going. We have an analysis called a gap analysis. We use that in tax planning, retirement planning, investment planning, estate planning. Again, we use a coaching model, and then if there's gaps, we have financial modeling and a process that helps us to identify those gaps and then outline strategies for clients. So if you're looking at your situation, and whether it's retirement planning, estate planning, investment planning, or overall financial planning, and you want to start a conversation about getting clear on those areas, reach out to us. Email address is shumphries@assante.com. You can call us at 204-977-8049, and of course the website shaunhumphries.com. So I wish you all the best in the whole area of powers of attorney planning, but also overall financial planning and retirement income planning. You take care.